But the governmental system in New York doesn't work well without a strong governor. There's no question about that. And under our Constitution and our budget practices, governor has a lot of power and a lot of responsibility. Those of you who share the same concerns I have assume governors will use those powers to produce fiscal sense and fiscal balance. But if you look at the history of the last 20 years, every abuse, i.e. one shot that was used from the sale of Attica Prison to plug a budget hole, to the use of the money that came from the privatization of Blue Cross Blue Shield. If you look at the sweeping of all of the bank accounts, fiduciary accounts the states have, the tobacco securitization, other asset sales, other financings, one-shot financings, they were all initiated by the executive branch of the government. And you can't lose sight of that. But the truth of the matter is, I don't feel I accomplished anything very substantive. I think that I've hopefully enhanced the public dialogue on the subject. I've met enough members of the legislature to believe there's a lot of good there, as well as what you read about all the time. I wish there were better people in government generally. I understand the disincentives. I've shared vicariously the pain that a lot of the good people in government feel when their ideas are ignored, or like Pete Granis was fired, and I've seen the very talented people who run the budget division try very hard to get the political system to focus on all of the consequences of what they do and not just the ones they intend. And I've shared some of their frustrations.
You mentioned that the state needs a strong governor. Do you feel that Governor Patterson was a strong governor?
I think he wanted to. I think it was a difficult set of circumstances to succeed the way he did, and he had not had experience as an executive, but I think he tried to do the right things, absolutely.
You were very honest in your talk.
Pardon me?
You were very honest in your talk. Do you think you used your skills effectively in the last 2 years?
Well, you know, I think that that's a difficult question to answer. I told you, I made a set of recommendations. He did not, I assume he didn't agree with them because he didn't push that legislation. But in fairness to David, he wanted to see what the reaction was generally. And the two things happened. One, the Attorney General conveyed to the distinguished gentleman from the Associated Press that he was opposed to it, and that was well known very quickly because Mike wrote a story to that effect the very next day. And second of all, there were some people at the right side, I don't mean right correct, but conservative side of the spectrum, who chose to isolate one of many pieces of my recommendation and say Ravitch is recommending borrowing without describing that the borrowing I recommended was for transitional purposes only. It was an exact replica of the methodology we had used to avoid the New York City financial crisis in 1975. So immediately, everybody said, not everybody, everybody said, well, this is just a terrible proposal because it involves borrowing. But there wasn't very much discussion of it, and I would say that again, it's complicated, it's boring, and it was much more fun for all of you to ask questions about Hiram Montserrat and Peter Spada.
Well, I think Brendan Scott with the
Oh, yeah.
you mentioned how the governor appointed you under the, with the charge that you would address, you would provide financial advice. Then you say that when you gave your financial advice that he rejected it. Do you regret taking the job under those
Yeah, I've never looked back on things. It's been a terrific learning curve. I've met a lot of very interesting, bright, good people. I know a lot more about the government than I knew. I thought I knew a lot about it because of my prior involvement. And I was chairman of a charter revision commission for the city, and I was chairman of the Citizens Budget Commission for years. But this has been an extraordinary learning curve for me, and I've reached the ripe old age where being intellectually engaged is what keeps the juices flowing.